Okay, so now comes the fun part, which is actually putting those insights into action that you've gathered through surveys and interviews and product usage data. And I think there's two particular ways to do this. One relates to informing your product roadmap, and then the other is around go-to-market strategy. So first, with the product roadmap, developers will often be very opinionated about the product. They will have a long list of requests for things to build next. So make sure to document those. Take notes, have a tracker that you and your PM share to account for each feature request you're getting, who's requested it, and importantly, the dollar value associated with it. So that way it's really easy then to prioritize the features that are going to be most impactful for the business and that developers are actually willing to pay for. That's something where I think having that documented and shared across your team is really critical for making sure that those developer insights are making their way into the actual roadmap prioritization. Something else that I've done at Salesforce and now NexHealth is bring developers right into the product meetings themselves. I think PMs always appreciate that. The development teams internally themselves really appreciate hearing from developers. And again, a lot of times those folks are really busy. They're not necessarily going to have the time or the space to set up those conversations themselves. So make sure you are acting on their behalf to elevate your developer users' voices in their product planning sessions and their product development process. Also, share interview notes. So I mentioned before, having a weekly recap is a really good best practice, but also if you learn something right away that's actionable for a team, like maybe you've identified some bug in the product, get that to the relevant stakeholder, if it's a PM or an engineering lead, immediately, because they will typically want to act on it right away. And it's doing nobody good if you just sit on those insights until you have time to write up your recap. It's helpful to then synthesize interview themes across several different conversations for, again, that weekly recap or something that's maybe going out on a bi-weekly or monthly cadence to a broader audience, but get the actionable intel to the right team right away. And that's going to then show that you're iterating quickly, and it's going to make your developer interviewees feel even more appreciated and heard because you're acting on their feedback very quickly. And then finally, create those feedback loops. Like I said, make sure you're always going back to your developers and documenting, whether it's in your newsletter or just in one-off conversations, what feedback you've acted on. If you're not acting on certain feedback, you can share that and just explain that there are other priorities right now, but always make sure that you're closing that loop with the folks who are actually offering you feedback. The go-to-market strategy is another area you can inform with developer feedback. And there's some obvious ways to do this with your content strategy, where, of course, you can look at the developer questions you're getting on your forum, the type of inbound you're getting around different topic areas that developers are curious about. That's obviously important. There's pricing, where you can do a lot of quantitative research via surveys to understand willingness to pay, the way that developers like to pay, whether that's per call or with some sort of two-part tariff for your pricing structure. But some other interesting things that I've found to be helpful where developers can yield insight is actually on the way you name your products themselves. Developers will often approach product names a little bit differently than a non-technical audience, where maybe something exciting like Salesforce Lightning or Salesforce Einstein resonates really well with a sales or a marketing audience. We actually ended up naming that MuleSoft solution the framework for the Paycheck Protection Program. So not a very sexy name, but one that actually worked really well in our testing, because we knew that developers were going right into our exchange and just typing in Paycheck Protection Program, the name of that small business loan program. They weren't looking for any sort of branded term or something that was a little bit of a fluffy name. They just wanted to know, do we have a solution for this particular problem? And that's what we named it. And it made it a lot easier for them to find. And ultimately, a lot of times that's going to be what resonates with the developer audience, is something literal and descriptive like that. You'll also want to think about more than just gut feelings, but actually how your names relate to parts of your product that maybe developers are already using. Think about the code they've already written if you have an API product, and is the name you're proposing for a new part of that API going to conflict with any other endpoints that you already have? That's something really important to keep in mind. And again, test with your internal teams and test with your external developers who are already using the product and have written code to see if a potential name is going to break anything.